Howdy folks, and welcome to another episode of Stanley and the Sea Can. All right, today I was hoping to answer some questions as to, well, what can you stick on the end of your muzzle? If you can grab a little threaded barrel here, most of your guns or firearms, doesn't matter how long the barrel is, you're typically going to have some sort of threads on the end. So in this particular case, it's a half 28, which is common for 9mm and 22 calibers, like 5.56, 223, etc., etc. And then the other most common one is 5/8 24, which is kind of covers your 30 caliber projectiles. So what can you stick on the end of this? And should you fire it without anything on there? I guess the gist of this is this part's hot off the press, so it's not fully deburred or anything cleaned up yet. But when we finish barrels, there's a few options. You can get nitrided, you can get blued, you can get parkerized, or you can have raw stainless steel. Those are the most common things you're going to see on the marketplace, and they all kind of do different things. So this particular barrel blank is for a 9mm. So that results in this wall being very, very thin here. So if we were to nitride this, nitride is like a penetrating coating that kind of goes in and makes the outside harder than the inside. It goes, it's a gas that they're going to present this part into a machine, and they'll kind of flood it with gas that is going to cause, like, the outside will go nice black, and it'll also get harder, which also affects the inside of the bore. And since it's getting harder from all sides, it's kind of growing in this way and growing in that way at the same time. So if you had a 9mm like this with a half 28 thread, and you fired this without anything threaded on the end, you could have it break. It could split and break. It's not going to be some sort of catastrophic explosion where you're like, nuclear bomb going off or something like that, but you'd end up breaking and cracking and wrecking this option, which might result in your barrel becoming too short. Because when we calculate the overall barrel length, you go from the end of the muzzle right there, once this is finished, that is, to the breech face, right? So if this breaks off, this barrel, which could be right on that kind of gray threshold line of just over 4 inches, if this breaks off here, you've just lost about half an inch of the barrel there, because what's considered the barrel is the part of the metal that has the rifling on the inside, like that kind of nice spiral cut. So that would be bad. You'd end up with a prohibited barrel by just having that thing break off, and then you can't put any cool toys on there. So I would say for 9mm stuff, you would go with a blued or parkerized or stainless steel piece. And for other ones like 5.56, I like the nitride coating because it's nice and hard. It makes everything nice and hard. You get better barrel life out of it. It's almost like the modern equivalent of chrome plating your bores, which we could see in some mil-serp stuff from the Cold War era. Okay, so what do we have to put on the end here then? So we know that we should put something on, because there is high pressure here on the inside. It could burst, and you could damage or ding these threads up so that you can't use it in the future. You could put a thread protector on there or something, but most people will run something on the end. So this here is your classic, it's called an A2 bird cage. It's got all these little slots cut out here for flash, and the bottom bit is solid metal. So typically you'd time this so that when it's threaded on, and if this is your shooting position, you'd find the middle one right there. You'd have a nice little star of flash come at the top, and the bottom is smooth, typically, so that way for shooting prone, you're not kicking up lots of dust and debris that's going to make you choke or whatever. So this would be considered a flash hider. So that's what it's designed to do. Is if you were to watch a typical firearm shot, especially something with a shorter barrel where you have way too much powder, you're going to end up with like a big teardrop shape of fire coming out the end of the barrel. Depending on what you're doing, you may want that, right? You may want to, if you're going to shoot indoors or something like that, you want to be extra obnoxious, you're going to go with the shortest barrel you possibly can, so that way you can have a huge fireball, huge report, everything looks awesome. But how do you want that fireball to look? So you can kind of manipulate that a little bit with this flash hider. That's how we could use it in Canada in the civilian market anyway. Now let's say, conversely, you don't really care about the flash and how it looks, but you care about recoil, and you're worried about how it's going to feel when you shoot it. Maybe you're worried about rapid shooting, or the reset after you shoot, you take your shot, you have that muzzle flip, right? So this is a heavy duty break from our friends at Precision Armament. So what you have here is multiple little angled pieces that come back. So as the hot gases from firing go up through here, the projectile is going to be like a temporary nearly plug, and it's going to force the gases out and out and out. And that's going to kind of create a forward pull of this, which will reduce your felt recoil. Depending on all the magic and the geometries and such inside, you can have it reduce recoil substantially, like 50, 60, 70% in some cases. The con to this one is you're going to end up with a huge fireball, especially on a short barrel, and you're going to end up with a lot of blast and noise coming backwards. So if this was, you know, the firearm muzzle, and this was me as a shooter here, the sound is going to come back in a kind of a cone like this. So it misses me, but my little buddy standing right here just happens to be almost perfectly in line. So for this guy, it's going to sound incredibly loud, and they may even feel like a concussive kind of like wind hit from them, from just using a muzzle brake like this. And some people want that. Some people want to be as loud as possible and obnoxious as possible. And you can certainly use something like this to do that, achieve that, especially if you don't care about, if you're not worried about recoil or whatever. You can even knock some of these baffles out and make it even more obnoxious. But this is functionally an enloudener for the noise backwards to the shooting line. And then, well, what do you do if you want it to be quieter for all of your friends and family and stuff? We can't have suppressors or silencers in Canada just because of the rules we have and the regulations. Although interestingly enough, in Europe, you can't shoot a firearm outside unless you have a suppressor. So this is another example of a fake can from TNA, but the interesting part of this one is it is a linear compensator built in here. So the projectile will come through the center hole, and then all the gases, there's a bit of a chamber in there, so all the gases will kind of form up in there, and then they can't come with the sides, but they'll blast out of these other 6 holes, and to go in a kind of a more forward sound. So this is directing the sound away from the shooting position, outwards more towards the muzzle position. It's not going to do anything for recoil. In fact, it might even make it feel a little bit harder because now you're pushing more things forward. And it's not going to do anything for your flash, but it will make it sound from your firing position just ever so slightly quieter. You'll definitely notice from this, using something, if you use a linear comp on one firearm and then take it off, throw it out, put the brake on there, and then take another shot, the shots fired with a brake will be substantially louder than this one. We're not acting as a silencer or a suppressor here because we haven't altered the sound volume, the amount of decibels and sound pressure that's coming out of the firearm. We've just pushed it into a more preferential location, I guess, which is down range away from us. Okay, that about sums up the most common things we can do here in Canada for muzzle threads and how they work and what we do. So if you guys would like to know how my rig looks and which devices I choose to run on my different setups, comment, let's see yours. And if you just want to kind of see more videos like this that are just generic in nature, that's kind of going over the various topics and what's allowed in Canada, what's not. By the way, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just kind of saying this is what's commonly sold and how they work and why they work. Write something like more parts in the comment section. Okay, well, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. And as Grandma used to say, hey kids, remember what's red and bad for your teeth? It's a brick.